Frank Ocean there. A song, really, I think more than anything, about moving on and like pushing past heartbreak kind of into new things. Like, that to me is the story of Swim Good. It's really one of the deceptively darker cuts off of this album. The imagery is direct. The metaphors are clear. We're just pushing through the ocean. We're pushing ahead. We're leaving all that bad stuff behind. Swim Good's not really an emotive swan song. It's a promise of new beginnings. For as dark as the vocal tone and production are, Frank Ocean really is saying farewell to heartbreak. And it's like, we're moving on. We're going on to better and bigger things. Like, that is the kind of sense that I get from this situation. As you can see, he's kind of, the album cover, or the single cover, I should say, has him kind of jumping in the water with what looks like some sort of kimono. I don't know, but maybe it's not even him. Who knows? The tricks they pull in Hollywood, right, folks? Looking at the first verse, Frank quickly kind of establishes this heartbreak motif, and then continues with a lot of like funeral imagery, and then kind of breaking through from it. Kick up my shoes and swim good. That is the vibe that you really get from there. And swimming on good is really what Frank Ocean would continue to do here. Yeah, I mean, all the way from booking your first studio session at age 12 to making Nostalgia Ultra to moving to LA and all that stuff, it is very, very good. Yeah, so what happens here after this is kind of getting into a little bit about here how he moved to LA. With the studio flooded and city in ruins, Frank received an offer from a friend in LA for discounted studio time. He decided to scrape together some funds by doing sheetrocking work in the rebuilding effort, and soon after drove out to LA with $1,100 in his pocket. He was only supposed to be there for 6 weeks, but a coincidental come-up exposed him to the big opportunity. So big, in fact, it would keep him in the City of Angels for over 6 years. Wow, 6 weeks versus 6 years. That is something. So, yeah, and I really don't want to get like kind of tell you about this, like Frank Ocean in his own words here. Really kind of great GQ interview way back from what he did in 2012. Asked about what made him move to LA, saying, he says, I have been putting together these demos. I was going to properly record in a real studio in LA, so I saved up money doing sheetrocking. I drove out with my girlfriend at the time. I was only supposed to stay there 6 weeks. Don't feel like I ever made a conscious decision really to stay 6 years. You just kind of roll. The first 4.5 years was me in the studio every day writing songs for other people. I had jobs, 11 jobs. I don't even know how anyone can possibly have 11 jobs. I worked at Kinko's, Fat Burger, Subway. I was a sandwich artist. I was a claims processor at Allstate Insurance. Yeah, and the funny thing is about that quote, him calling himself a sandwich artist in this GQ interview from like 2012 is pretty much cited in almost every biography that I could have found about him, because it's just, that is how private he is. That is how sparing he is with his quotes. But yeah, it is really kind of an interesting journey to see how he ended up literally from Fat Burger to writing songs for Brandy, Justin Bieber, and John Legend. Like, you really think of Frank as kind of someone with a musical conception, but I think really great kind of like musical taste and song construction as opposed to his lyricism. But his lyricism in the early time was really highly valued. Kind of the deepness of what he wrote about, and really the texture and the way that you felt like Pharrell said, like many other people have said about his music, is like you are watching a movie. It is so it's so all encompassing, his music, and so meticulously selected. Each sound is meant to create a very distinct kind of vibe and feeling in your head, in your ears as you listen to it, and that is really so important to the structure of Frank's music. And about that, he says, one night I went to a listening party just to pick up my backpack from a friend. Next thing I knew, I'm in the studio, and everyone's putting their laptops on the pool table playing songs through these big-ass speakers. It was crazy. And they wanted me to play, so I plugged in, and they were like, oh, shit. There were producers there, and they said, you should come up to the studio and write. So I did. I'd sit in those rooms for hours, but I wouldn't write any line that wasn't as good as the lines being written in the rooms next to me. It was just like I had to elevate. I was looking at it like an athlete then. I just wanted to be better than everybody else. And that is I think so much of the kind of Frank Ocean mindset. It's just like, I'm here, I've had this kind of tough life, father abandoned me, like not economically super well off, not too many figures of kind of influence in my life, from kind of a paternal side, like grandfather wasn't that good either, although he did. I do get the sense from kind of looking at this, like he did really, I think, teach Frank a lot, but it is like really shows you that kind of chip on his shoulder, I think, is the really great term. That kind of really reminds me of this similar mindset that Tom Brady had. Kind of the 4.5 years that it took him from kind of just being in the background, being in the shadows, writing songs, from when he first went to LA in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, to finally making it big around the turn of the decade in 2010. Like, that is such an impressive transformation to me, and it's just wow. Yeah, and it's really interesting what he kind of goes on to say here. It was just like, I had to elevate. I was looking at it like an athlete like then. I just want to be better than anybody else. And it really, I think what makes him take off here is the addition of emotion. I hadn't gone through anything emotionally yet, he says. I'd never been in love. I'd never been heartbroken. When that happened, that's really what changed everything. That turned me into a real artist. It made the difference between somebody hearing something of mine and being like, wow, this is a fresh approach, to someone hearing something of mine and crying, you know? That is a very relatable thing. So, you're talking about the relationship you wrote on your Tumblr page as the interview question here. This is the kind of very, very interesting thing to me. It is this. In the wee hours of July 4th, just before he released Channel Orange, whatever, in the year 2012, he put on his Tumblr site, which is kind of at that point the main way he interacted with his fans. He released a document that appeared to be the acknowledgement section of the liner notes for his forthcoming record. Again, reporting here about that from the Times, frankocean.tumblr, post 264-737-98723. And it's really an interesting, kind of list here. He says, whoever you are, wherever you are, I'm starting to think we're a lot alike. Human beings spinning on blackness, all this kind of emotional stuff. But he writes, quote, 4 summers ago, I met somebody. I was 19 years old. He was 2. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like that at the time, like you think about it, it sounds in 2020 like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, oh, he's gay or whatever. But at that time, it really was, especially as he was kind of fitting into around the same time as early and he got into LA. We'll get into how he met Odd Future in a second, but Odd Future was at that point in time regularly using the F slur, and it was something that made a lot of people very uncomfortable. That is for sure. And Frank kind of sending that out and kind of saying also in Nostalgia Ultra and some social justice messages too really was something that set him apart as someone who was kind of the alternative side of the kind of brash Odd Future brand that we all know and love in its own way. So yeah, that was probably one of the more controversial things. So the 2-paragraph message was a product of a sensitive mind and a still broken heart. By the time I realized I was in love, it was malignant. It was hopeless. There was no escaping, no negotiating with the feeling, no choice. It was my first love. It changed my life. He wrote, imagine being thrown on a plane. The media took the message to be an outright profession of homosexuality, though Ocean really was kind of reluctant to label himself. And really, he says it was like he was thrown off the cliff. This relationship he had when he was 19, and that was something that really changed a lot for him. It was a floodgate. It opened up the works, he says. So that was what kind of spurred that musical creativity. So he comes out there in 2005 tough times, kind of slow, writing songs when you can, working jobs when you can, doing some studio work. You know how it is, back and forth. So Def Jam signed Frank as an artist in 2009, but really didn't open up the checkbook to help record in any real way. So the next year, though, when Frank met Tyler, and kind of the other members of Odd Future, it was a really, really big thing for him. He says, I was at a dark time in my life when I met them. I was just looking for a reprieve. At 20 or 21, I had, I think, a couple $100,000 from producing and songwriting, a nice car, a Beverly Hills apartment, and I was miserable because of the relationship in part and the heartbreak in part, and also just miserable because of, like, just carting that around. And here was this group of like-minded individuals whose irreverence made me revere. The do-it-yourself mentality of OF really rubbed off on me. They inspired you to record your first album, Nostalgia Ultra, on your own dime and release it for free. This is again from the GQ interview. Def Jam signed Lonnie Bro. Then this guy, Frank Ocean, puts out an internet sensation that makes a lot of the best albums lists. And then when they tried to sign you again, was it satisfying? This is the question. When they tried to sign you again, was it satisfying to say, "Oh, you already have"? Like that was kind of the dynamic there, because he just kind of he was signed but kind of shoved in the back by Def Jam, really putting a great talent away, which is not a good move to sound like Donald Trump there. But he says, like, that was kind of the Nostalgia Ultra, really kind of the independent cult classic that was all over the best albums list, that really made Frank and gave him his start as Frank Ocean. I mean, the record label just looked up and was like, what? Wait, what? Like, that was absolutely something that they did not expect. So what Frank Ocean just told them was, give me $1 million if you want the next album. Sorry. Yeah. It really is something. So I think that is the big, interesting thing. So let's talk about Frank. Let's just talk about Chanel Orange. He actually wrote the song for Chanel Orange in 3 weeks, or Channel Orange. I don't even know how you say it. I'm just gonna say Channel Orange. Chanel Orange, whatever. I worked, and then he said I worked on them for 9 months, typical gestation period. And yeah, it's kind of interesting, this kind of conversation. This goes back to what I was talking about, about how Frank Ocean, the perfectionist, the chip on the shoulder, that kind of dynamic there. And this really is kind of a revealing conversation that he had, talking to John Mayer in the rehearsal before SNL, and he was like, quote, "You love to take the hardest," this is Frank talking, and he says that Mayer said to him, "You love to take things the hardest way. You don't always have to, but I don't know about that." It's like Billy Joel says in the song Vienna, when the truth is told that you can get what you want or you can just get old. We all know we have a finite period of time. I just feel like if I'm going to be alive, I want to be challenged to be as immortal as possible. The path that isn't an easy way, but it is a rewarding way. Like, this is a guy who really has, I think, come to peace with it in a way that we really haven't, that not everybody does, or really until they die, that, like, we are set on this earth for a period of time, and he, I think, made the commitment early on to just be like, I'm going to make the absolute most of it. I'm going to be the best person I can be at that time, which is something that very, very few people, I think, really fully digest and enhance. So, that is a big, big part of what I think makes Frank Ocean. He says, "I never think about myself as an artist working in this time. I think about it in macro. I feel like Elton John just made Tiny Dancer. He just made that shit last night. Jimi Hendrix just burned his fucking guitar on stage, right? Freddie Mercury just had the half mic stand in his hand in the stadium. Prince was just on the mountain in Under the Cherry Moon. And I was there. That's how I look at it." It's kind of interesting perspective. Like, this just went down. You see the mastery I'm surrounded by? How on earth am I going to take the easiest way? A friend of mine jokes that I have a painstaking royalty complex. like maybe I was a Duke in a past life, but all you have is 100%, period. And that's really who he is.